Good evening. I am so thrilled to be here tonight to present this webinar on mortgage mastery, effectively how to get your mortgage free as fast as possible. Got a few people still coming into the room tonight, so I'll just wait for them to come through. Um, I feel particularly honoured this evening for anyone in Auckland who might be joining us. It feels like the whole world is going to Coldplay, but they get their one evening. I'm here to change your life. So that is what I'm here to deliver to you today in this webinar. So before we get started, I will go through a wee disclaimer, but please, if you have any questions, anything you'd like to ask me, please pop a wee question in the chat box below. You can ask me absolutely anything financially related, and my wonderful producer Jess will collate those and I'll answer them at the end. So in terms of that disclaimer, this presentation is provided for informational purposes only. The content of this presentation is not intended as a substitute for regulated financial advice. I'll give you lots of my best tips and tricks, but it's designed to give you a Sharpie or high-level view in terms of the principles we think you should execute on going forward. If you want those more architectural drawings, then I really encourage you to reach out to a qualified financial advisor. So introducing myself, my name is Katie Wesney. I've been with Enable Me for a decade now. I love what I do. I'm the head strategic coach. I have wonderful clients, but I also help coach our coaches. I'm a chartered accountant. I trained at KPMG for like 1,000 years ago now, and I'm also obviously a qualified financial advisor. My job is to get my clients ahead faster than they're naturally on track to do so themselves. We've got a lot to cover off today. So our story arc today is we'll go through where our current environment has landed us, the forces that we're dealing with, both external and internal. I'm going to plainly state why the old strategies just don't work and what does, and how to help train your mindset to do what needs to be done. I'll round out with an inspirational client story, and then I'll get to all your questions. Right, so in terms of today, on average, 49% of New Zealanders' income is going towards their mortgage. So if you're feeling the pinch, please know you are not alone. 56% of Kiwis live payday to payday. Again, it's tough out there. We don't back away from that. And I despise this stat, but again, we have to call it out. 135,000 Kiwis over 65 still have a mortgage, and it's really hard to survive on the pension even without a mortgage. So again, that just means you do not live the lifestyle you want, or you have to work much longer than you want to. 25.2 billion mortgage debt is owned by the over 65. I absolutely detest this default position for lots of people, and that's what we're rallying against, and that's what we'd like to help you prevent in terms of having a really tailored strategy around your mortgage going forward. And look, it is harder than it ever has been to get mortgage free, to get retirement ready. Interest rates are higher than they've been for a very long time. They're coming down, thankfully, but again, they're still higher than they were. Debt to income ratios are challenging. It's expensive to buy housing in New Zealand, and we have to somehow make sure that we create financially independent children along the journey. But please, please don't wait for conditions to be perfect to start making financial progress. It is very rare that the stars will align. In fact, I would say very nearly never do the stars align. So where do you start? And again, there are so many external forces at play. What are the things that we believe dictate our perception of whether the conditions are perfect or not? We can't bank on luck. And I'll tell you what, the more strategic you are, you find the luckier that you get. You can't rely on interest rates because if that was the case, we would have been making leaps and bounds when interest rates were 2.5%. And we really weren't. We were spending our money on other things in all reality. So we need to be more deliberate in our actions and working with our controllables. And there is hope. Of course, they are. I wouldn't be delivering this webinar to you if there wasn't. And I'll call it out right now. It involves more than just trying to predict interest rates or just hoping that things will work out. I am here to force a result for my clients. And how do we do that? We do that by being really clinical in terms of the strategy that we execute on going forward. And that mortgage strategy is a cornerstone of what comes next in terms of wealth creation. So instead of trying to look at what we can't control, we control the controllables. And first, we look within us in terms of what makes us tick, because everyone's different and we acknowledge that. And we need to harness what makes you you, good and bad, to make sure that we operate in an environment and we do what needs to be done at the right time. And again, acknowledging that the game has changed. When my grandfather was younger, all he had to do is buy a house early enough and to kind of plod along paying off that mortgage. And he was on a conveyor belt that meant that he was going to be okay. That is not the case anymore. You cannot rely on just natural talent. It's just not enough. And the old rules do not apply. Just save more than you spend. It doesn't work in all reality. Again, you have to be strategic and you have to do what needs to be done. Again, call it out. Hard work will outperform natural talent every time. Same as in the sporting arena, this is exactly the same in the financial arena. So what you do need is, again, to train hard, to understand, again, to flex and grow that financial muscle stronger. Often you need a support crew, people who are on your side, making sure that you do what needs to be done as the game shifts. We shift accordingly. Nothing can be set in concrete. It's like a game plan. It has to be flexible enough. So as life flex, we flexes your financial plan. And it actually starts by knowing your starting point. And that's really important. We need to understand your end game in terms of what you're trying to achieve, how long you have to achieve that goal. And again, understanding your natural makeup and how you operate around money dictates the strategies that are going to work for you. And everyone's different. And we're going to unpack that together through the course of this webinar. And everyone gets dealt a different hand. We need to make sure that you play your hand to the best of your ability. But for most of us, your strategy comes down to three things. Firstly, we've got to maximize your savings, or in all reality, your surplus, what's left over, cash in, cash out, what's left over. Engine room of anything that happens next. Secondly, which is why you're here in this webinar, we have to kill that mortgage. And thirdly, we need to grow wealth for retirement. Doing the first and second helps unlock the third, and generally we need to do all of them concurrently. But there are areas of focus, and that foundational piece is where we start. But again, we need to understand, well, what makes up a good plan, and what we think and what we know to be true. And at Enable Me, we've been doing this for a very long time now, is firstly, you've got to understand, what is the problem to be solved? Are we trying to get you mortgage free? Are we trying to get you retired early? Do you want to give more options to your children? Are you trying to support them? We need to understand what we're trying to execute around. Again, that sets the parameters around where we work. We understand your natural tendencies around money, your own money personalities. You have to remove inefficiencies. You got to get you lean and mean to make sure that, again, you achieve what you can. And how we do that is often by creating really good systems around your money that we know work. We don't have to rely on willpower. We make sure that we have a really strong infrastructure around you, which supports you no matter what conditions you're facing. And again, we focus on what we want, not what we don't. That wealth mindset is really important to make sure you sustain the actions. And again, it's not about knowing what to do, it's about doing what needs to be done. Really important to clock. And also knowing this is not a lock and leave and walk away. You've got to be able to adjust and reset because conditions change through your lifetime. Good things happen, bad things happen. We know that. We need to make sure that you have a plan that's flexible enough. So no matter what the conditions, you're still doing, again, what needs to be done and you've maximized that position at every point. And often people think the way to fix this is to earn more money. But in all reality, the more that you earn, the more that you spend, and the more you disconnect from your finances. Again, this is said without judgment. This is just human nature. But we believe financial success comes down to two things. 80% is around behavior and 20% is around strategy. And we want to marry the two up in terms of your financial success into the future. So again, let's unpack what that first step might look like. And that first step is always maximizing that savings or that surplus. Cash in, cash out, what's left over. Again, that's the engine room of anything that happens thereafter. And that strong foundation is like building a house. Just like when you build a house on shaky ground, you can't achieve financial success without solid money habits. Think of your habits as the concrete foundation. You want them strong so everything else stands strong. Really, really important. And goal setting is like a GPS in terms of you've got to set in the coordinates of where you need to go. Otherwise, you just end up going around in circles and not reaching your destination. So that goal setting is really important, as is your cash flow management. Cash flow management is like taking a really good grocery list to the supermarket. You do what needs to be done. You don't have wastage or slippage. That's exactly like having a really good cash flow management. If you don't, it's like just going to the supermarket when you're hungry. Again, you're not efficient. You spend more than you need to, and again, it can end up with you being a little bit bloated, either in the puku or financially. And you must be really optimal in terms of your mortgage management. And again, we're going to talk about that next in a little bit more detail in terms of exactly what that might look like. But again, for you to master that mortgage, you need to have excess funds to chuck against said mortgage to get mortgage free as fast as possible. So that foundational piece is where we start. And as I said, that behavioral tendency that we all have, and everyone's different, your spending personality, your ambition, your risk tolerance, how you operate around rules, and your own triggers dictate what that cash output might look like in terms of how much you're saving or what inefficiencies are embedded within that foundational piece. So let's understand together a little bit more about you and what's driving your position. So first, let's help diagnose your own money personality. So we generally put people into three categories, which fits probably 99.9% of our clients. So first of all, we talk about shoppers. So I'm a shopper. My natural inclination is to spend money. My husband is a saver. His natural inclination is to save money. And Thirdly, there's a plotter, neither here nor there with money, so doesn't particularly enjoy shopping, but they're not particularly great at saving either. So somewhere in between. And often it gets interesting when we have a partner. And when we think about combinations that I see, two shoppers together look great. Not making the financial progress they deserve, certainly. A shopper and a saver together, generally there's a little niggle in terms of the relationship and how they each operate around money. And you pop a plotter into the mix, and again, you're just spinning your wheels because often there's that overwhelm piece. You don't want to get anything wrong. So again, default position is you just keep doing what you're doing. And that's generally the greatest opportunity cost of all. And that is true of all personality types, actually. Again, if you're not harnessing that natural tendency, then again, you don't achieve what you could. So, give you some examples around that. So, for me as a shopper, I need goals that are sexy enough or motivating enough for me to try harder. And I love to see visibility around progress. That's really important to me and my shopper clients. Saver, it's an advantage. You cannot say it's not. It's just often you've got to pair it with a really great strategy and then you're unstoppable. And again, with a plotter, we need to make sure that we have a really solid infrastructure around you. You know what needs to be done. So again, that trajectory shifts for yourself and you're not spinning your wheels. And again, understanding your approach to risk plays a huge role in shaping your financial journey. Just like your money personality, your risk tolerance is key to how you approach financial decisions. Whether you're cautious, bold, or optimistic, understanding your risk profile helps craft a plan that suits you. The key is finding that balance, taking enough risk to grow, but not so much that you're constantly worried or stuck. And again, part of my duty of care to my clients is that, again, we can hold the line no matter what happens. Really, really important. So when we talk about a safety warden, they're kind of slow and steady, but sometimes too safe. They won't take unnecessary risk, but also might miss out on growth opportunities. And often financial success might require stepping out of your comfort zone a bit to make those gains, versus an adventurer can be high risk, high reward, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But again, sometimes you need to make sure that you've got experts to guide to ensure you're not taking on too much risk or that risk is well calculated and we've got buffers in place. And a dreamer, and to be honest, I don't work with too many dreamers. Sometimes there's a dreamer as part of a couple, and they often are just hoping for the best, but not taking action. And that often can leave them stuck waiting for the universe to deliver instead of taking control. And again, this is really about empowerment, doing what needs to be done and focusing on action. Again, I reiterate this to my clients. I will offer, if you've heard me deliver webinars before, 1% of financial success is those ideas, 99% is that execution and action. So we lean into action. And everyone has different willpowers and motivations to act, and your approach to expectations, both from yourself and others, shapes how you achieve your financial goals. So let's break those down. So I'm an upholder. I meet both internal and external expectations. Um, Similar to I'm not a disciplined athlete, but it is just like a disciplined athlete. They stick to the plan and they deliver results. A questioner, my husband's a questioner. He needs a good reason before committing to a goal. Think of them as the strategist. They analyze before they act, and they'll only do anything that they believe is true. And I like that about my questioners. And to be honest, I work with all personality types. But again, a questioner is never going to do something that I tell them to do. They need to really believe it and understand to really act on. And I love that about my questioners. I work with lots of obligers. Obligers are actually the most common personality trait. They thrive with external accountability, so obviously work super well with a coach. They're like a player who performs best when they know the coach is watching, kind of rise. And the rebel, and I do work with actually lots of rebels. They resist expectations, but are motivated to prove doubters wrong. And I find what works really well with my rebels is to give them lots of options. They steer the ship, but they want to understand the consequences of different options available to them. So again, nothing's wrong or right. It's understanding, well, what is the construct you need to put around yourself to make sure that you will execute and do what needs to be done in terms of your overall financial strategy. And finally, what is your cash position? Where are you now? So often people who come to see me are floating. That would be the vast majority of my clients. So they're absolutely fine. Um, they're just missing out on opportunities and not doing what needs to be done. So vast majority of my clients are floating. They are fine, but they are not making the financial progress they deserve. Some people initially come to me and they're sinking. So what's coming in is not covering what's going out. And often people will self-diagnose themselves as floating. But if I see credit card debt that they can't repay in full, I will slip them into sinking, in fact, because again, it means that you can't correct past overspending. So I would classify you still as kind of slipping backwards if you're not keeping up with what's coming in. And for all of my clients, I want to get them to flying. And for my clients who are flying, I need them to fly higher. Again, it's all of those 1% in terms of trajectory that we focus on, which means that we maximize your position. And flying is meaning that you are saving or reducing your debt, or you've created 20% of your surplus towards moving forward. And that's really important. And again, knowing your starting point and those natural tendencies helps to optimize your cash flow, because to have a really great mortgage strategy, you need to have excess cash left over to chuck against that mortgage to pay it off faster than that natural position that you set generally with the bank, which for the vast majority of people, we're paying off a mortgage in 30 years. Sometimes you're paying it off a bit faster, but that's what we rally against. But to do that, you need to have cash flow left over. And in all reality, that's how Enable Me started back in the day when our founder, Hannah McQueen, went to buy her first home in Auckland. She needed a mortgage of 350,000. Obviously, quite some time ago. We should be so lucky now. And again, she does what we all do initially in terms of mortgage strategy. We think, I know what will fix this. I'm going to pay the lowest amount of interest and I'm going to play all the banks off against each other. In doing so, she found that she would save 12,000 in that year in terms of interest that she didn't have to pay for the bank. Great. 12,000 is $12,000. That's a significant sum of money. But she worked out of that $350,000 mortgage over that 30-year trajectory, she was going to be paying close to $1 million back to the bank. That is what she was interested in preventing. So this was obviously way before children, when she had headspace to think about such things. She went to one of our professors at the University of Auckland, and they spent about 6 months and they put together a optimal mortgage structure. Again, I think it was about 8 pages of calculus, and this told us exactly, down to the dollar, how to optimally structure a mortgage. But what she realized, and what I'm again focusing this first piece of this webinar on tonight, is to be able to execute on that optimal mortgage structure or strategy, you need to have cash left over. And so she went to her colleagues like myself, who again were earning reasonable money, but like her, often at the end of a month, they were just paying off their credit card. Sometimes they were slipping backwards. When it might coincide with a holiday, etc. So again, that's how we were born, in fact, Enable Me, and we have been obsessed around how do we make sure that people maximize their position using the resources they have. And that foundational piece is really important to us. And we know that on average, people fresher about 15% of their net income. Do the maths, it's a big figure. It's my job to find that. I've been doing it for the last decade, and that 15% is an absolute game changer. But the differential is not just to find it, you've got to put it to good use. And again, that's the thing that unlocks everything that comes next. And that 15% is often hidden in lots of different places. For lots of people, it's around takeaways, extra trips to the supermarket, subscriptions, the mortgage structure. Often people are paying way too much interest to the bank. So again, please don't do that. Utilities, bank fees. So that's all that kind of fresher piece. And how I describe this to my clients, I think this graph really articulates that really well, is that you spend money up to a point. Beyond that, you're just doing it for the sake of it. And I always emphasize to my clients, this is not about living your smallest life. It is not. Anyone can save money sitting in a dark corner eating baked beans. This is not what it's about. It's understanding, well, what are the things that make me happy? Let's earmark space for that, and we call that our non-negotiables. So my non-negotiables are my kids' activities, my cleaner, and my holidays. My husband's are more, yes, coffee. He likes holidays too, but his like toys. They don't make me happy. But again, we both have to be happy. And again, it's saying, well, let's earmark space for those things that make us happy, and everything other than that, let's channel that and put it to better use. And we fit across lots of things that we do. I like this example of coffee because I'm very passionate about coffee. So my first cup of coffee of the day, I am riding that caffeine wave, lots of bang for my buck. Second cup, not quite as good as my first, but still pretty good. Third cup, I tend to feel a bit sick. So my optimal level of coffee drinking is 1.5 cups. Anything over and above that, I'm just doing it for the sake of it. So again, you will be frittering. Everyone does. It's understanding where you're frittering it. Is it around that strategic piece? Is it around that overspending? For most people, it's a little bit of both. If I'm honest, we find that and we put that to better use. If you have a home mortgage, we're going to initially channel that into clearing that as fast as possible. So that's step two. We crush your mortgage. Super important to us. And again, please take this time, even just to think about what you're doing currently in terms of strategy. It's a really good time to kind of draw breath. And often the questions that we're asked as part of this process and part of that optimal mortgage strategy is, should I refinance to another bank or stay put? And that, again, I'm not here to give you specified financial advice. I don't know your position. And lots of things come into play when we look at this for our clients. Often the biggest question is, what are your current fixed rates? Because this is the edge of the market that you can pay significant amounts of break fees to the bank. So you have to be really conscious of that. And again, what are your overall goals? That plays into our thinking as well in terms of, are you going to upgrade your home? Are you going to downsize your home? What is the time frames around that? But again, if you're staying put often in that house for a length of time, again, your mortgage is floating. Really good opportunity to assess what's available to you. Um, we don't play favorites with banks. Again, we think it's really important to have a really great structure within that mortgage. That is the differential piece for us, and that's what we assess. Often, it is an opportunity when you are coming off floating. If you haven't received a cash back of late and that overall goals, it is an opportunity to assess where things are at. Could you get a better deal? Could you reset that mortgage structure? Could you get a cash back? These are all opportunities to potentially help mitigate those higher interest rates. Should I fix or float? In terms of my optimal structure for the clients I work with, it's a mix of both. If I fix, how long should I fix for? Again, it depends on the interest rates that we're seeing, and they change often. It feels like daily, weekly, certainly. And again, depends on your goals. Lots of people aren't fixing for terribly long at this edge of the market, knowing that it's predicted, and again, nothing is certain ever, that interest rates will continue to come down. How does it affect how I structure the rest of the mortgage? Again, that has to align to your goals, and how fast could I be repaying my mortgage? And again, we'll speak to that soon. And again, it is very rarely about the interest rate. Of course, I say pay the least amount in interest, but it's all about the pace at which you pay it off. That is the differential. And again, that's really important to clock. It's not about paying the banks off against each other. It's about saying, well, how do I get rid of this darn thing? And that's what we focus on in terms of execution. Firstly, we understand your debt to income ratio. It's more important than what you earn. So for us, in terms of debt to income ratio, that affects our expectations in terms of how fast you can pay off the mortgage. Initially, for me and my clients, I want to halve the term that naturally you're on track to do so, but that debt to income ratio plays into that. And when it's getting too big, we really have to think about, for some people, that debt is 8 times their household income. That is tricky to absorb. And then we've got to really be assessing as part of your overall financial position, is this the right thing for you to be holding this property, or have you pushed the boat out, or is there another construct that we could focus on going forward in terms of alleviating financial pressure? But that debt to income ratio, really important in terms of pace at which you can pay off your mortgage. I do not accept the default position, which is 30 years. If you are repaying it over 30 years, you're not alone. That is the absolute average term for New Zealanders. But if you're doing that, generally speaking, you're repaying up to 3 times what you borrowed. So 500,000 repaid over 30 years is 1.5 million. And again, why we focus on paying it off as fast as possible. And again, just going through those 3 Rs, that refixing, which is just refixing your lending at your current bank. There is and there lots of my clients do an element of all of these things at times, depending on their goals, etc. Refinancing, we've talked about that and when that could be a good time to look at. For the vast majority of our clients who come to see us, we restructure their lending to ensure that it is more optimal. So of course, as part of our toolbox, we do have this mortgage optimization calculation. And what does that mean to my clients? So essentially what we do, again, 8 pages of calculus, but essentially what we do is we cut that mortgage into savings or debt reduction goals. So every year they've got a piece they can attack over and above what the bank wants them to do on their terms, not the bank's terms. And again, generally speaking, depending on their goals, etc., we'll fix the remainder in terms of what comes next, but to give them certainty. So for most of my clients, there is an element of floating and fixed for certainty, depending on their individual goals. And generally speaking, for the vast majority of clients, I like that goal to align to what they can repay in the next 12 months or offset in terms of savings. That sits as a balance within the revolving credit. Lots of people haven't necessarily heard of a revolving credit or understand how to use that really well. Often it's called a revolving credit with good reason. What a revolving credit is, if you haven't heard of it, it's like a really big overdraft account. It's floating. For example, you could have a 20,000 revolving credit. It's part of your mortgage. You owe 20,000 to the bank. It's floating, but it's like a big bank account. If you have any savings, you can plonk that into the revolving credit. It offsets that debt immediately, but you can reaccess it going forward. And I really like that construct for the vast majority of my clients because it's, to me, really interest efficient. You only pay interest on the amount outstanding, not the available balance. But I like that you steer the ship within that revolving credit so you can reaccess that progress. If the kids get sick, you get sick, the car blows up, you're not tied to higher fixed repayments. And it also leaves them open for other wealth creation options. Because again, just paying off a mortgage, whilst great, you can't eat your house. So we need to be thinking about other wealth creation options. But first comes first, we need to find that surplus. We need to be increasing the cadence of which you pay off that mortgage. That's creating equity that potentially we could tap into. So we have another appreciating asset in terms of investments going forward. That is why it is so critical to have that really refined mortgage structure and strategy. But financial progress, again, it's really linear. You need to make sure that you have a really flexible approach to that mortgage. And again, one of the reasons why I really um, advocate for that revolving credit for lots of my clients, because you do have that flexibility. You can reaccess it and it's really interest efficient. Again, reiterating, part of my job is for my clients, if the tide goes out, no one's swimming naked. That's really important to me. Makes everyone blush, but super important to me. So I wanted to wrap things up before I got to questions with a wee example of some of our favorite clients. So this is Luke and Jake, came to us in 2017 in their mid-30s, mortgage of 700K in Auckland, term of 30 years. So again, doing what everyone's doing, which is their average term. We said to them, finding that, I think for them it was a slightly more than 15%, but only a smidge more, we can get you mortgage free in 12 years. So let's look at what that looks like. So in all reality, they paid it off in 4 years. And again, this is not about living a miserable life. It's saying, well, how do we have that really strong foundation? How can we create that cash surplus? How do we find that money that's going walkabout to pop it into that mortgage to make sure we increase the cadence of repayments? But over the time they've been working with us, they bought a car, they got married, yay. They renovated and they traveled overseas and they purchased 2 investment properties. Because for us, whilst getting mortgage free is great, you can't eat your house. So again, we need to be seeing what opportunities that unlocks as we increase that cadence of repayment. And please don't think this was smooth sailing for these clients. Um, everyone, everyone gets punched in the face at times. So they went through some really serious health challenges, redundancy. So it really wasn't all plain sailing. But they believed, they were strategic, they stuck to their plan, they did what needs to be done. When it was tough, we'd created the buffers within their situation, which meant that they could hold their ground. And again, reiterating, if you haven't caught the message before, for us, yes, of course we want to get you mortgage free. Of course we do. But that's not the end game. It's really not. We focus on it because it unlocks new pathways and new opportunities, like leveraging an equity to invest in property and bridge your retirement gap. And why property? It outperforms other asset classes by 250%, not because it's amazing, it's just because you've used the bank's money to acquire a bigger asset. So again, using an example, you could have 100,000 in cash, you could invest it in managed funds. You could get amazing returns on that, but you're getting returns on 100,000 versus you take that same 100,000 and you pop that as a deposit on a $500,000 property, you get gains on 500 versus 100. That's the beauty around property. And again, for lots of our clients who come to us initially, not all, but lots, they do have a mortgage. Again, when you are looking at investment strategies with property, you don't necessarily need cash. You just need that equity piece. So that's important to clock. Not for us, it's not about it was never about budgeting. It's, well, how do we be purposeful and directive around cash flow? How do we make sure we're more strategic in terms of our mortgage strategy? And what does that unlock in terms of wealth creation and options around retirement? That's actually our focus, but we always walk before we run. And I've got a wee graph because I do have chartered accountant blood in me. Um, so we've all got to get back to our baseline, which is being debt free on that family home. You just got to be. It's really tricky to have a mortgage in retirement. One of our biggest cash outflows. So I've got the dotted line. That's what most people do, to be honest with you. They aim to get mortgage free by 65. So that we're trying to get you back to that baseline, which is that black line in the middle. So that's what the vast majority of people were doing. They're trying to get mortgage free by 65. Whilst fine, again, it gives you very little time to enjoy the funds because you just rip through them in retirement, right? Really tricky. This example, people run out of their KiwiSaver within kind of 3 years. They're done by 69 in terms of living a good life. Right on time. Work a long time. So again, that's the problem for the vast majority of people we're solving for. And I'm just, again, if we improve that baseline, if we can get you mortgage free faster, in this example, difference between 65 and 55 means that we have the ability to lean into wealth creation more. You save after that point, which means that your money lasts for longer, which means, you're saving an investment, which means that you run out of money at 80 versus 69. Still not acceptable for my clients. I need to get you to at least 90, living your best life. That's what I want to lean into in terms of strategy. How do we do that? Reiterating, we really focus on that cash flow foundation piece. We have that really optimal mortgage strategy. And then we look at, well, what does this unlock in terms of wealth creation? And I'm agnostic to what my clients invest in. It's just what will close the gap in terms of end goal. Again, looking at mortgage repayment and a wealth plan, which is always my focus for my clients, is that, again, get your mortgage free faster. Great. We want to, again, lean into wealth creation, but if we're leveraging, we turbocharge that wealth piece, which means, again, we've got another appreciating asset in the background, which helps, again, push out that age to 90. That is what we lean into, again, just to give you more options going forward. There aren't shortcuts to any place worth going. You got to put in the mahi, but for the vast majority of people who come to see me, I always see that people have worked incredibly hard to get to where they are right now. Unequivocally, I think in 95% of cases, they are not making the financial progress that they deserve. And again, that's what we course correct in terms of plan and strategy. And what does a coach like myself help my clients with? Well, we help with in terms of execution. We increase the odds of you achieving your goals. For most people, they focus on that career piece, earning as much as they can. Whilst great, you are relying on working and effort to get funds in. For me, I I like that to a point, but my goal is for you to stop working when you want and to work by choice. And how do you do that? You do that by get that asset position working as hard as possible for you. So again, you're working hard. We need to make sure that translates to progress. That progress needs to be channeled as productively as possible. You've got to be strategic in how you pay off your mortgage. It's not just increasing the cadence of the monthly repayment. It's not, because again, that can accidentally actually close yourself off from other opportunities because it looks like there's less cash left over to do other things like wealth creation. So again, it's doing that really strategically, making sure that you have really good buffers, because that helps to mitigate risk and increase that financial resilience. And often, of course, I know structure, of course, I know strategy, but I think a big component of my client success is that external accountability. You always do better when you work with somebody else. You lift your game, you do what needs to be done, and you get there in the shortest amount of time. I mean, I have a coach at the gym, of course I do, because accidentally I find the most easiest way to do an exercise, and that actually doesn't affect change. So that's, again, a coach, really useful in lots of different realms, particularly in finances and health. And it prevents you from falling back onto old habits. Again, we're trying to instigate a better environment. And again, often that's about having better systems. I will be directive around how to structure bank accounts, how to make sure you track what needs to be done. Really important in terms of having that robust structure around better money management that we talked about, kind of like having that shopping list when you go to the supermarket. That's what we're trying to put in place in terms of your finances. So again, easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing. I love that saying. You never rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Thank you, James Clear. And again, part of this is just saying, well, let's just have better systems and structures that will serve you. You work hard, you make the financial progress you deserve. So just to reiterate the key takeaways, please understand your own habits and tendencies that might hold you back. And there is positives and minuses of every single tendency we have. And it's understanding, well, what does my natural tendency, if you have a partner, what does that look like? And lots of single people really love that independent sounding board. But if you do have a partner, how does that coming together mean? What does that mean in terms of strategy? What should you focus on? Please know what you've done to this point is no indication of what you are capable of in the future. It's just not. I've been doing this for a decade, and I can say that with 100% certainty. And your tendencies indicate what strategy will be effective for you. Telling me as a shopper to save, whilst I love the idea, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not. Give me a good, sexy goal, like saying to me, well, Katie, I can help your kids, of which I have 3. I can help your kids, I can get you mortgage free, and I can buy a property. Well, I'm on board. But again, it's understanding how your makeup affects how you operate around money and what will speak to you. Your mortgage ratio shows you what's possible. And again, for us, we do not accept the default position of New Zealanders, which is we track to that natural 30-year trajectory. Unacceptable. I'm always trying to halve it for my clients, but your starting position will dictate that. And understand what you're capable of. I hope you've been doing the maths in terms of 15% of that net income. That is your fritter. That is your fritter. That's what we need to find to chuck against that mortgage, to increase the cadence of repayment, to understand what that unlocks next for you. Really exciting, but just knowing all of this does nothing. You have to shift what you execute on. And again, great to have that GPS, to have map out that great goal. But for my clients, we start where our feet are, and you do the next right thing and the next right thing and the next right thing, and your trajectory shifts. And that's what we really want you to encourage you to do. So we've got a special offer for you tonight. We'd love to invite you to come and have an initial consultation with someone like myself up and down the country for a 90-minute initial consultation with us. If you have a partner and your finances are combined, they come along too. Effectively, we all jump on the financial scales together. We understand, where are you at now? Where do you want to be? Are you on track to get to where you want to be? And could you do better? And what does that better look like in terms of strategy? Let's translate all of what we've discussed tonight in terms of your own personal circumstance, so we map out what you need to do to achieve financial success. So that session is usually $400. If you book it tonight. That's only 149, so one night only offer. How do you do that? You scan that QR code with your phone, or you can jump on to our website, enable.me/mortgage-free Katie. Um, so tonight, if you're watching a record of this, is November the 13th. Lucky night for some. Good reason why you didn't come to the Coldplay concert. We're going to change your life. If you do watch a rerun of this, still love to offer you a discount on that 90-minute consult with a coach like myself. But instead of being 149 like it is tonight, we'll discount it down to 249. So still a discount, but not as great as tonight's. So we've compiled the questions that you asked us previously. Shall we go through them now, Jess?
Great. Thank you so much for the amazing presentation. I know I'm more happy to be sitting here with you than at the Coldplay concert for sure.
Liar, Jess.
Absolutely. So, couple of great questions that have come through. So, first
Great.
one is, what advice do you have for managing renovations while paying off the mortgage?
Yeah. So lots of my clients come to me and they're like, should we upgrade our home? Should we renovate? So, really common. I think it's having a budget for your renovation, having that off to the side. And usually we need to facilitate through additional funding from the bank, or that might be through savings. That should not preclude you from making progress, though, on an everyday basis. So, again, we have the renovation budget off to the side. We understand what we're focusing on for the next year in terms of what we're executing on that renovation. I still want you to make progress, though, in terms of repaying a chunk of that mortgage in the next 12 months. That's going to help mitigate the effect of that renovation. So essentially that's what we want to focus on. So we need to keep that renovation clean, crisp off to the side, but I still want you to make progress in terms of paying off that mortgage.
Great, thank you so much, Katie. The next question, so you touched on this earlier on in the presentation, so this will be a great refresher. But the question is, I am trying to decide between fixed or floating rates. Do you have any advice for choosing between the two?
So that will depend on your goals and your situation. Everyone's different. And again, for my clients, are some are waiting just in terms of the next OCR announcement. We've got one coming up really soon. So some people are just waiting and watching and floating, but they're not going to be floating for too long. And ideally, when that next OCR comes out in the coming weeks, we want to really understand where those mortgage rates have fallen. And essentially, for my clients, we want to optimally structure that lending. So, again, remember what I said, for most of my clients, they have a savings or debt reduction goal embedded within that revolving credit, and then they'll fix the remainder in alignment with their goals and their plans. So, there's a mix of both. Really important not to float generally. Um, More than you can offset or pay off in the next 12 months. Otherwise, you would fix it and pay less interest, because that fixed rate is generally about 1.5% lower than it is to float. So again, that's generally the construct that we look at. Everyone's different though. And if you're unsure, please seek qualified financial advice.
Thank you so much, Katie. And just wanted to respond to a question that's come through
Great.
around the QR code, and it's saying the landing page that brings you to says it's 249. Don't worry, if you book it tonight, we've got a great team who will honor the 149 tonight.
Yep.
So apologies that that's been made quite confusing. So but don't worry if
I
it's
personally
booked
promise
tonight.
I will hunt down the marketing team. No, we promise. Yeah, Jess? Yeah, no, we promise. Again, that's really important. We do what we say. That's one of our
Yeah.
mottos at work. So we promise. Yeah,
Cool.
149 if you book it tonight.
Yeah, apologies for that. But yeah, so we've probably got time to answer one more question.
Hmm.
Um, what are the risks or key things to consider when you're thinking about entering property investing
Oh,
market?
that's a great question to end on. There's risk with everything you do, and I think it's really important to buy the right property. I think there's this thing that, yeah, you just buy any old property and you'll be right. It's not. You need to make sure that you buy the right property and you have the ability to hold it. So often, again, it comes down to goals. Remember, we talked about, well, what do we need to achieve in terms of the strategy that we're executing on? So when we're looking at investment property for my clients, what does it need to deliver to you from a capital gain perspective to help sort retirement or help your kids? What is the gain that we need? So that's a factor in terms of property selection. We want to look at the past capital growth rates. And then we also want to understand, well, what is the yield of that property? So yield is rent, essentially. You work out rent per week, times it by 52, divided by what you pay for that property. And so the vast majority of my clients, we want that yield to be at least 4%, because again, that helps give them the ability to hold the darn thing into the future. So for us, it's a mix of both. It's what's the capital gain we require and what is the yield? And we need to be able to hold that thing. So for my clients, it's a long-term investment to de-risk it. So that's kind of the thinking in terms of what comes into what property you buy. And just to always say, we focus on once you've acquired that right property investment for you and your plan, doesn't take our eye off. Let's get you mortgage free on that family home if you still have a mortgage. And we would, the vast majority of people would put that investment debt on interest only. Because again, if you do it right, there's a tax deduction associated with that versus your family home. It's just dead money. Let's get rid of the sucker. So that's what that looks like.
Thank you so much, Katie. And
All good.
it's probably a good time to plug that, we not only help clients get mortgage free, but we also have a program to help people, to guide people on the property investing ladder as well. So yeah. If you wanted to
We
wrap
know
up,
everything.
yeah, if you wanted to wrap up, I'll leave it with you. Thank you so much, Katie.
Great. Well, I've had fun tonight. Really hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, please reach out if you have any other questions or you would like to have that initial consultation. We'd love to hear from you. Great offer tonight. Much better than going to Coldplay. Do that any old time. Change your life. Get mortgage free, grow wealth. So sincerely, again, hope you enjoyed tonight. And yeah, we'll really look forward to seeing you. Take care.
Thank you.